Hello and happy Christmas. Merry Christmas. It's Christmas Eve, and guess what? I've got a full show for you. Joining me today, the prophet, may peace be upon his name, Jeff Jarvis, joins me. If you want to jump to it, it starts at 16 minutes. Had a great conversation live with Jeff Jarvis yesterday. Many of you tuned in, and so did a whole bunch of trolls over on YouTube. It was kind of fun to have them there. And I also have your headlines and clips for you, what I call the shit show that is coming up. Just want to say Merry Christmas. I hope that if you're traveling, you drive safe and get to your destination without any drama or problems or flat tires or anything like that. And I hope that you have a good time. And if you are alone, join up on the Discord. Make a plan. You can meet online and people can connect there. We have a great community here at the stand-up community. And I'm very, very happy to have you listening today here on Christmas Eve or whenever you press play on today's show. There's lots to talk about, and I'm going to get to it. I was up late last night because I joined CNN's 11 o'clock show hosted by Laura Coates, although she wasn't there last night. Sub-host who I wasn't familiar with was there, and it hasn't happened yet as I'm talking, so I can't really talk about it. But I'm sure it was awesome, and it was very funny as we recapped 2025, some of the more lighthearted moments. Yeah. Take solace in the lighthearted moments, the good things that happened, because obviously it was basically the nightmare before Christmas all year long. The whole year was the nightmare before Christmas. But here we are, and I hope that it's a good one, and I'm happy to have you. So let me go through the craziness that happened yesterday. Just because it's Christmas doesn't mean the news stops, and I've got it covered for you. Time for the shit show.
It's Pete's Headlines and Clip Show. Get in on the shit show.
At this point, you probably know a lot of the details about the latest Epstein links, the letter that Epstein wrote Larry Nassar about Donald Trump. I mean, it's pretty crazy. The most prolific profile of prolific rapist of girls, writing to the second most about the potentially first or third most. Who knows how many young women Trump may have allegedly raped, but it's just disgusting news to come out yesterday. He was also on that plane a lot more times than we knew. And apparently there are 10 co-conspirators whose names we don't know, but I think we're going to find out at some point. Lots to talk about with that, but I'm going to give you probably everything else in addition that probably got a little undercovered, as a result of these Epstein headlines, including over the dissent from Justices Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch. The Supreme Court yesterday declined to let the Trump administration immediately deploy the National Guard in Chicago. The latest high court test of Grover Cleveland's sweeping claims of authority in his second term. His A-holiness flew on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet at least 8 times in the mid-1990s, apparently. Well, that was one I already mentioned, I guess. Here's the latest in a series of U.S. escalations. The U.S. has moved a large number of special operations aircraft and multiple cargo planes filled with troops and equipment into the Caribbean area this week, just in time for Christmas, guys, giving the U.S. additional options for possible military action in the region. You got to wonder if a lot more people sought out that CBS segment online than would have watched it on CBS in the first place, because while the fear over CBS's news decision to delay a 60 Minutes report about deportees sent by the regime to a notorious Salvadoran prison persisted Monday, the finished segment was already circulating online after streaming in Canada. The report, titled Inside CCOT, appeared on a streaming app owned by Canada's global television network. Oops, somebody forgot the Canadians to tell them not to air it, and they did, because they're completely inept or someone sneaky. I like it either way. How about this lawsuit that's worth watching? 21 state and district attorneys general have filed a lawsuit against the Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought, Christian nationalist extremist, on Monday, opposing his moves to shutter the very, very important Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That is definitely worth watching. And Steve Bennett at Metablog says the last one out at Heritage Foundation should remember to turn off the lights. More than a dozen staffers at the Heritage Foundation are leaving the conservative think tank to join a nonprofit led by former President Mike Pence, as the embattled organization continues to reel from ongoing turmoil. And a federal judge's decision has moved his MAGA sty and his family a step closer to constructing his presidential library on a valuable plot of land in Miami that was controversially transferred to him by Florida Republicans. So how about that? Sad news for former Senator Ben Sasse, Republican of Nebraska. He announced Tuesday that he had been diagnosed with a metastasized stage 4 pancreatic cancer, writing on X that the diagnosis is a death sentence. Crazy. Reminder of how precious life can be. Guy is only 53 years old. He said advanced pancreatic is nasty stuff, a death sentence. But I already had a death sentence before last week. We all do. This is hard for someone wired to work and build, but harder still as a husband and a dad. So sad news for the former Republican senator from Nebraska, Ben Sasse. Everybody is reacting and pissed off about J.D. Vance's white supremacy at the Turning Points convention they held over the weekend. Also, how about this? New York Times analysis found that Doge did not really cut government spending. Its biggest claims were largely incorrect, and its many smaller cuts added up to much fewer savings. So I thought that was a pretty interesting story worth looking into. Russia bombed Ukraine hours after President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the latest U.S.-backed peace plan looked quite solid. The NAACP is trying to prove in court that a Virginia school board had racist intent when it reinstated the names of schools honoring Confederate generals. Good. And the actor and comedian Russell Brand has been charged with 2 new additional counts of rape and sexual assault for encounters said to have occurred between 1999 and 2005. How about that? Not going to get pardoned for those. He's such a douchebag, such a turncoat, and such a coward. Ugh, gross. Can't believe I ever liked him. And lastly, New Jersey presented awards to more than 24 bomb-sniffing dogs for her helping keep last month's elections safe. Congratulations to the K-9 unit for their heroics after a wave of bomb threats in New Jersey on Election Day. More than 24 dogs were presented with an award from the state attorney general. Still no word on what the award was, but I'm hoping it was a big slab of beef or something like that. Good boys. You're such a good boys. Sorry about that. All right. Well, those are your headlines. Let's get to the clips that I've gathered for you. First, here is one of the Epstein victim and survivors, one of the most outspoken ones, a former Trump supporter. Her name is Haley Robeson. She was on CNN yesterday. She was retracting any support for the president and any of his administration.
Talking about Trump, right? Just to be clear, in terms of pointing the fingers or having, yes, exactly. And you said that before, that you have never heard anything to implicate him.
Exactly. It wasn't until I started meeting some of the other women from different countries and different states where I really started to hear their stories. And of course, as a survivor sister and going through what I went through, I do believe these girls. But at the end of the day, I am no longer supporting this administration. I redact any support I've ever given to him, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel. I am so disgusted with this administration. I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel both need to resign, and I would love to see number 47 get impeached over this. And I'm just waiting. Should Pam Bondi be held in contempt, you think, for the release of these files? She needs to be held more than in contempt. Absolutely.
All right. There you go. Thought that was pretty powerful. She continues to speak out. Here is the mayor of Boston, Mayor Michelle Wu, and she is speaking out, advocating for the over 8,000 Somali Americans who live and work in Boston.
We stand with the Somali community every day. There are more than 8,000 Somali Americans who call Greater Boston home. These are our neighbors, doctors and nurses, teachers, first responders, Boston police officers. You cannot talk about any achievement that the city of Boston has had in safety, jobs, and economic development, in education, without talking about the Somali community that has lifted our city up. We are proud and we are grateful for our Somali community and for our Somali American neighbors. Boston and the country are clear that hate has no place in our society. We will use every attack to actually strengthen and expand the services available, to empower and work alongside our community members who are already doing so much good in the world and setting an example for the rest of the country.
All right. I got a bunch of random clips for you here. That's the mayor of Boston there. And now let's go to Stacey Abrams of Georgia on her podcast, making such amazing points in this clip I found, talking about centrists and the labels and what why it matters. I just thought this was so good. I wanted to share it with everybody.
Know what the centrist position on racism is. There are people who are truly centrist. They have very moderate positions on certain policies. I push back, though, on the notions of centrism that are to the exclusion of identity. I think we are using the term centrist to justify and permit behavior that is antithetical to our value system. There's 77 million people who clearly identified and said, I want what Trump offers. There were 75 million who said, I want what Harris offers. There were 90 million people who said, I don't hear myself reflected in any of you, and I'm going to sit down. My political advice is that instead of trying to go after Buddhists to convince them to become Baptist, which is what you do when you go after a Republican voter, I think instead of going after Buddhists to make them Baptists, you just get Baptists to go to church. We got a lot of people who share our values, but do not feel invited into our party. We don't all believe exactly the same thing, but we have enough overlap that those should be the things that we fight for. And if that's what people mean by centrism, I'm okay with that. But often when I hear political pundits and consultants talk about centrism, what they mean is I need an excuse to violate my values in order to secure your vote. You may disagree with Republicans in this moment, but you know what it is. You know what their values are. If Democrats can't say the same thing about our party, if we can't say what we believe, then we're asking people to invest their hope and their time in something amorphous that may turn on them. And that's a dangerous bet for people who've never seen democracy really deliver for them.
Yeah, so good. So good. I highly recommend sharing that clip with everybody. And I guess tell them to listen to the show. How about that? You can find it here. You can find it online. And she hosts a show for the Pod Saves guys. Here is the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, who's pissed off how racist J.D. Vance is.
So this is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy. When you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole damn life. And I think everybody in this room knows what they're doing. So we're here today to say enough of this. We're here today to stand that Minnesota will protect their neighbors.
Yes, indeed. Minnesota will protect their neighbors. And did you see the new Dave Chappelle special on Netflix? I watched it, most of it, over the weekend. It was all right. Some funny jokes, but as always, I was pretty turned off by a lot of what he said and did, his defense of Saudi Arabia, and also, obviously, the trans jokes, which were inevitable. I thought it was really interesting to hear Van Nathan, who I've grown to respect. I met him a few weeks back, a couple months back. I was on CNN panel with him. I like this guy. He's smart. Here he is on his podcast.
Dave is standing on the stage after years of making jokes about a marginalized, endangered community and talking about the freedom of those jokes. And he's right about his freedom to tell jokes. The freedom of expression and what he can say and how he can say and how important that is and how there shouldn't be any societal and definitely governmental repercussions for doing that. He gives that whole thing to us for years because he wants to tell these jokes. Then he talks about how safe he feels telling jokes in Saudi Arabia, or how he's much safer. In Saudi Arabia, people have been arrested and in prison for criticizing the crown prince, advocating for women's rights, questioning religious authorities, retweeting dissidents, for private WhatsApp messages, anonymous social media accounts, talking to foreign journalists, for advocating for human rights. All of that is the way that it goes. I am not standing on high as an American and criticizing Saudi Arabia's country and culture because the way my people have been treated in this country and culture for so long, I can't do that. But what I can say is Dave Chappelle did that for money.
Oh no, he definitely did it for money. He says it.
And it's not, I'm not offended by it, but I'm like, look at the people swallow this shit. And what he did was stand on the stage and in a lot of different ways do the same thing he's always done, which is get his audience to lift their dress up over their head, over their eyes, and over their ears.
I can't disagree. I thought that was a pretty good synopsis right there from Van Nathan. All right, here is Jon Stewart in The Daily Show. This is, I think, actually a couple weeks old, but I still thought it was inspiring. Wanted to share it with you here at the end of the clip show.
I want to say this to Trump's defenders. You don't have to bend over backwards trying to make Trump's authoritarian power grabs seem like the rule of law. He does not give a f*** anymore. He's saying it straight up. Trump is saying, the people like dictators. Trump is saying, I hate my opponents and I want them punished. And Trump is saying, I'll use all the levers of government at my disposal to accomplish that goal. So you can get on board with that and say, I'm with that. Or you can join the rest of us and fight like hell for this constitutional republic.
Well, there you go. Jon Stewart, The Daily Show, and that is your Christmas Eve shit show. Now it's time for my guest. The great Jeff Jarvis and I sat down. We were on YouTube and Substack Live. He is a journalist, an associate professor, a public speaker, former television critic. He's an advocate for the open web and the internet in general. Author of several books, working on a new one right now. As always, you can find him at thebuzzmachine.com. You can also find him on all the social media platforms, including Twitter and Threads and Blue Sky. He's the media pundit's pundit. I found him over on the Howard Stern Show when I used to listen to him as a caller and guest, and I became friends with him, and we're good friends, and I love Jeff Jarvis, and I'm so happy whenever he joins me. So let's do it right now with the prophet, peace be upon his name, the great Professor Jeff Jarvis. Dude, look at who it is. We're live. Didn't tell anybody I was going to go live. Surprise! We're live with the legend. May peace be upon the prophet, Jeff Jarvis. Professor Jarvis, welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me here a day before Christmas Eve.
Good to see you on the Eve. I've missed you.
Eve. That's right. Now, do you have any traditions or anything this time of year?
No.
No, not at all.
Hiding, not going to the store.
I have the opposite tradition. This is when I usually shop.
You get to a certain age and it just doesn't matter to anybody anymore. So we basically don't do gifts anymore.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. I think that there's some truth to that for a lot of people too. I'm not a very good gift giver. It's one of my weaknesses. I think I'm a little self-interested on that metric, unfortunately. I like to give myself in other ways, of course, Jeff. But when I go out and shop this time of year, I feel like I just see a bunch of other men, and I feel like when we look, at each other, and when we look away, it's not like solidarity. It's like,
no, it's loneliness in the crowd. Hannah Arendt. Yeah, I was an impossible gift giver. So my family, my wife's family, had different traditions. And the first years we came together, we saw this. On my family, we'd always say, "Oh, you're not going to like it. You can take it back. I have the receipts. It's a living gift certificate." My wife's family, they'd say, "Why'd you give me this?" And it was so different.
That's funny. My daughters are different that way as well. And I've never gotten anything for my younger daughter that she liked. Not one time. I made the mistake of getting her jewelry a couple of years ago. She goes, she's like, "Is this gold? Who wears gold?" It's like, oh, forget it. I didn't know that no one wore gold, I guess. Sorry.
How could you not know
now,
this?
How do you feel about the rest of this time of year? You know, I think I probably told you in the past that I have a name. I've coined a name for the week after Christmas and before New Year's, when kind of nothing happens. There's no expectations. You're allowed to do anything you want. If you've been drinking for years, if you've been sober for years and years and years, you can drink during this week. It's taint week. Jarvis, it's taint week, the week between Christmas and New Year's. I feel like there should be something legally done about it, either in this country or some other. What do you think of this time period where there's no commerce, there's no guilt, there's no rules?
The problem is it's the week that always goes by way too fast. You think, I have a whole week. I can do these things.
Right.
And then before you know it, you've squandered it and it's gone and you're into the next fucking year.
That's a good point. It does go by.
Yeah.
I feel like you should.
I hate to be a doomsayer about your favorite week, but yeah, it's over before you know it.
Does anybody, if anybody's listening, that's why I sometimes miss being live on the radio or having, some massive live audience here on YouTube, which I dream about, or any platform. But this the idea of getting instant feedback, which of course there are people watching live, and hello and welcome. Hi, Rachel. Which is, does what does happen during this time of year, during this week? There are certain people that are super busy, obviously, before Christmas, there's delivery and there's retail and so on. But like after Christmas, who's the busiest people in the year? I don't know.
Return people.
The return people. So retail.
Retail return.
Yeah.
Now my Whole Foods has, of course, an Amazon return counter, and the line sometimes goes out the door.
Yeah. That's why I don't return anything ever. I just give up.
I hope not to, because I feel guilty about it, actually, because it doesn't end up sold again. It ends up going into waste. Wirecutter had this great feature. They went to the warehouse where you can buy a whole packet of things that have been returned, and they got all kinds of awful, too large, ugly clothes, and the poor reporter is in a mountain of clothes that have been returned that are going to go nowhere. Nothing's going to happen to them. It's a waste of labor. It's a waste of money. It's sad capitalism.
Sad capitalism as opposed to happy capitalism, which is a whole different thing.
Which is when you're rich.
Yeah, if you're rich, yeah, exactly.
That's happy capitalism. But you're never happy enough. That's the problem with it.
Did you see that Elon Musk, I guess he got his interests reinstated, a court maybe had paused his stock or something, and now he went from $600 to $700 billion in a day, and he's going to be at $1 trillion at some point. And I just started thinking about it. Do you ever do the math in your head of how much $100 million is, much less 700 million, much less 1 billion. Then eventually you get to 2 billion, and then you get to 700 billion. And it's just like
a little jealous here, Pete. Are you lusting after the money?
No, I'm not. I'm angry. It gets me. Nothing gets me angrier than one person having so much wealth and me not having coverage for vision, much less everybody that's less than me, which is billions and billions of people who have less than me, which don't have any health coverage or food, or, people that are in debt and living day. Like it gets me enraged that he or anybody has that much money, which is why I plan to win Powerball tonight with 17 of my high school friends. We've been playing the last 4 lotto because no one's winning. So I plan to be a millionaire after, I think it's tonight.
Idiot's tax.
Well,
I hate
whatever.
lotteries. I hate them.
Yeah.
I only bought them once in life when my mother made me go and buy a ticket for her. But
I do it because it's fun to exchange texts with 19 or however many guys, 15 of my high school buddies about it. It's like, and then there's this pressure to put in $10, which we all do. And then my friend said the only thing worse than, wasting money on a lottery ticket is if we won and some of the guys on this text chat didn't put in.
Right.
Imagine
right.
That.
Exactly. You don't want to win because it's going to ruin everything.
So lots to talk about with you in the news. Obviously, I certainly wanted to talk about, there's 2 major headline stories, the latest in the Epstein files, but most importantly, specifically to talk about a professor of journalism and just trying to understand kind of what's happened at CBS News, the once highly respected Edward R. Murrow, Cronkite, and Rather, 60 Minutes, all of that. So what Barry Weiss taken over. It's Trump CBS. Everything is now Trump hyphen and Trump Kennedy Center. So what do you make of this new regime under Barry Weiss? Before we get to her spiking the CCOT story on El Salvador, there was the Erica Kirk town hall. Before that, there were layoffs. Some of the best journalists that were still there, including John Dickerson and others, have left. What do you make of it so far? CBS Paramount.
So I got a call yesterday from CNN to go on with Abby Phillip. Unfortunately, I got bumped. And I wish I'd been on for one reason. I wish I'd been on to look at the camera straight on and say to journalists, this is an emergency. You cannot let Barry Weiss and the Ellis and Minnie Murdochs take over CNN. For any of its faults, democracy needs CNN. America needs CNN. The last thing we can afford is to have another Fox News created by Barry Weiss, and we can now know exactly what she'll do because of what she's been doing at CBS. She's been corrupting it. She's a hack. She's a nothing, and she has no pride whatsoever about using CBS as a propaganda outlet. The Erica Kirk, I watched, so you don't have to, the Erica Kirk episode. Did you watch it?
I did not, because I knew you would. And then I would. It
was terrible, absolutely terrible. It was cues for crying. It was just ridiculous. And she's making that into a series starring Barry Weiss, with such topics as, is feminism bad for women? Gee, since you're asking that, maybe you have an opinion about that, Barry. and just a ridiculous, let's interview J.D. Vance. Oh boy. And Steven Pinker and,
Is it uncommon? She's the editor-in-chief of CBS News, and she's also on air. Does that ever happen with television networks, or much less even newspapers?
I'm trying to think back. I don't know. Various anchors had editor titles. I think Walter Cronkite had an editor title. I think Dan Rather might have. It's not uncommon, but she's unique because she reports directly to the owner. Well, actually, the owner's son, we should say, because the owner is Larry Ellison, not David Ellison. And so it's a travesty that she's there. She used primetime for air quotes news. It didn't matter that the ratings were god-awful. It didn't matter that it was humiliating, because that's not the point. The point is to make propaganda. And that's what she's doing. And so come 60 Minutes, have you watched the full CCOT report?
I know, but the thing that, before we talk about it, the only reason why you can maybe is because apparently, is it true that it aired in Canadian networks?
Well, no, it was on. So the show was syndicated. And so apparently, because this was Saturday, late Friday, early Saturday, the show was in the can. It was ready. It was done. Right. Sharon Alfonsi had flown to Texas because all of her work was done. She'd recorded everything, including the intro. And then at midnight on Friday, Barry Weiss suddenly had more complaints and suddenly wanted a Stephen Miller interview inserted in it, and suddenly pulled it back, saying it was inadequate, though it had been screened 5 times. It had gone through legal. It had gone through everything. So the network thought it was done. And so it distributed it to its syndication partners, evidently. And in Canada, the syndication partner put it up on the app. And so I think in Eastern Canada, it was seen for a while and then captured. So if you go to archive.org, you can see good video of the entire 15-minute piece. And it's excellent, and it's frightening for what's being done in our name, sending people to CCOT. It's a superb report. There's nothing wrong with it. It's quite apparent. And now the interesting thing, Pete, is that Barry Weiss has put herself in quite the corner, because she has said, oh, no, we're going to air this. It's just it wasn't ready. Well, so now we're going to see what she wants to add in. What is it that's the Barry Weiss touch on this? And we can compare that to the finished journalistic, properly vetted piece that existed. Or she'll chicken out and say, oh, well, it's already out there. No point in airing it now. We'll see what she does. Meanwhile, we've got to see what happens with people on 60 Minutes. And I want to emphasize here that I'm empathetic with people who are in jobs working for slime balls, who can't afford to quit, who can't afford to stand up in principle. But 60 Minutes, I think, is probably special in that they're paid a lot of money and they have a very public persona and reputation that they want to protect individually. And so we're going to see push come to shove here about whether people quit to stand up on principle. Today, a colleague of mine named Carrie Brown, who's now at Montclair State, she and I were at CUNY together, and we both quit. And she said today, we hadn't really said this out loud today, but we both quit because the administration of the school did not back up the principles that we cared about. And we both left tenured positions because of that. I quit Entertainment Weekly, a story I tell in my book magazine, out now. And in fact, I refused to sign the managing editor's contract, which would have had a shut-up clause in it, because I didn't want to limit what I could say. So I gave up 3 years salary, bonus, and benefits. Nobody cared to read the story until I just wrote it, but fine, because I left on principle, because we were being pressured because of the merger of Time and Warner. People quit on principle in jobs, and I'm not suggesting that we should expect that of people, that that's a minimum, but at 60 Minutes, at the supposed diamond jubilee of American journalism, we're watching you guys.
And I'm not just saying this because you're my friend and I have a lot of admiration for you, but I do think that people who quit on principle, people who turn down money on principle, I believe that in this day and age, when we're trying to rate the credibility of journalists, media outlets, and know who is trustworthy, that is one way to measure the value of a person or an outlet. Have they ever quit on principle? True of any measure of someone's character. And so I think that it's one of the reasons why.
If you're a low-level reporter or producer on a shitty Sinclair station somewhere, yeah. Sinclair buys you, and you find that they're putting out propaganda, but you're paid very little these days, and you got a family to feed, I'm going to be empathetic. I'm going to understand if you can't quit, if you don't feel you can quit. But again, it's another matter whether Anderson Cooper stands there, just to pick on one famous rich name, and say, is he going to be silent? Scott Pelley spoke out at a meeting of 60 Minutes staff, and I think we should expect the journalistic staff of 60 Minutes to act like the 3 liberals in the Supreme Court and say something.
I love that. I love that. I think it matters. And I think that's an important way to measure people and their credibility. So speaking of back to that issue, I mean, everybody's saying the issue at CBS and this latest report, everybody is saying that the reporters went and tried to get comment from the administration. Reporters and journalists always do that. That's what good journalism is.
Absolutely.
If you're reporting on someone's life, their organization, their institution, their football team, whatever it is, before you print your story, before you go to air, you get their response. Now, it's worth mentioning and always talking about the principles of journalism when we live in a world where anyone can say anything without any recourse, and it's incentivized. I saw some YouTuber the other day reacting to the Brown shooter. He was some MAGA guy. He made up a whole narrative, and he has almost 1 million subscribers on YouTube. That's how I found him. I was like, this guy's not even. So it's important that we understand how that works. That's what they did at 60 Minutes. They went to get some comment from the administration on the story. No one would give them anything. And the
administration refused and sent them to the Venezuelan government, which then also refused to talk.
They refused to talk as well. And so Barry Weiss said, as one of her reasons, well, we didn't get comment from them. The reaction to that was, if that is the test, if that is how we're doing things moving forward, then it gives the Trump regime a kill switch on every single story that any media outlet, if that's the standard, well, they didn't want to say anything on camera or give any comment, that means we're going to kill the story. Explain that.
Exactly. And that's what Sharon Alfonsi said in a memo that she sent, an email that she sent to her colleagues at 60 Minutes, and it got leaked pretty easily. And I respect her very much for doing that. And she pointed that out, that journalists always ask for comment. You can choose to comment or not. And if you don't, that's not reason to kill the story, because then that gives the power. Then every administration from now on says, we ain't commenting, so don't do your story. It's obvious. It's just logical. It's not even ethical. It's just logical that as a journalist, you're cutting yourself off. And then Barry Weiss, at the last minute, suddenly decided that she wanted Stephen Miller in it and gave somebody his personal phone number, which means she's in contact with him, to get him on to spread his propaganda. And they had the opportunity through circles to do this before. She also tried to say, well, people already know CCOT's a bad place. Our listeners know that. We didn't go to the next level. Well, that argument, I've been an editor of a magazine and of news online sites. And if you have that comment, if you say, we're not moving this story enough, it's not new enough, you say that early in the process of reporting. As a boss, you have plenty of opportunity. There were 5 times this story went through the ringer, and she could have said, it doesn't say enough, but it does. It's frightening. It is the first person stories, narratives from 2 Venezuelans are sobering as hell. And again, this is being done in our names.
Really very important. That story, amongst others that could be done, that might be done, and now we know the precedent. You know, New York Times did a follow-up on one of the fishermen, or I should say maybe drug traffickers, allegedly, who the U.S. government military with Pete Hegseth had assassinated. New York Times went and interviewed his family. It's important reporting to know the consequences of America's actions, no matter what they might be, on immigration, on military escapades, or assassinations in this case. And you can't have loyalists in charge of entire media conglomerates, which is what they're becoming as well. I want to ask you, is there anything else we need to know about the 60 Minutes piece and moving forward before I move on to the potential purchase of it's a massive story. See, Netflix buying Warner
Netflix
Brothers.
Or Paramount buying Warner Brothers.
Netflix or Paramount. It would seem to me that if Netflix buys Paramount, it's maybe a little better than if Netflix buys Warner Brothers, it's a little better than Paramount buying Warner Brothers because of what it means for all their reporting, specifically CNN. If you're going to turn all of these major news outlets into MAGA outlets where the Trump administration has the kill switch, then, you know, that would be very, very bad because a lot of people still get their news from those sources. There's a lot of good journalists in all those outfits. What do you think about this potential purchase of Warner Brothers and all of their properties?
So if Netflix buys, they're not buying the old-fashioned networks. So they're not buying CNN. CNN and company and the other cable channels stay as a unit like Versant set off onto the ice flow from Comcast, which means that CNN is still vulnerable. somebody, including Paramount, could come along and try to buy them. Some bad guys could try to buy them. Some good guys could try to buy them. We don't know. Now, just the Netflix buying Warner Brothers, some are lamenting and saying, this is the end of Hollywood. This is the end of movies. Movies have been crap for years. The mass media is dead. I keep on saying on this show, Hollywood ain't what it used to be, folks. And so I don't lament that. This is dinosaurs huddling against the cold wind of the future. I actually think that having watched my fuck you money say fuck you, Jeff, when I had Time Warner stock and it merged with AOL, I think that Warner Brothers is a bad luck charm, and whoever buys it has major problems. AOL had huge problems with it. Discovery had huge problems with it. I think that it could bring bad luck omen to Netflix, but that's their business. Be that as it may. In terms of the streaming parts, well, again, that would be independent in that case. If Paramount buys, they have said they will buy the whole thing with various Arab nations' money. No longer Jared Kushner, who's been part of the deal, but he's pulled out. And we know what's going to happen. We know exactly what's going to happen because Trump has been demanding it, and Barry Weiss has done exactly what they've wanted. And when Trump was displeased that 60 Minutes interviewed Marjorie Taylor Greene and he made his displeasure known, I think that's why we saw the pullback on the CCOT story because of this. And we know that they will go and ruin CNN. Now, one can complain about CNN. It's not perfect, but it is a legitimate, decent news organization that is followed, as you say, Pete, by many people, and we need it. Full stop. We need CNN, and we can't see CNN corrupted the way CBS is. CBS is watched by a dying audience of old people. I don't care much about CBS anymore. It's dead. RIP. It's over. 60 Minutes might as well be dead. That was just the first shot in the heart. It'll take a few more, and it's dead too. I shrug. CNN is different. CNN is 24 hours a day. We turn to it when there's huge news. It matters. And CNN and MSNBC together, MS Now together are kind of all we have left of legitimate mass media. And we cannot afford to see this happen. And I fear that it still might, because I fear that Trump will step in and will put his thumb on the scale and will make the Paramount purchase happen.
Yeah, I really worry about that. That would be a very, very bad thing, but it would also be the least surprising thing as well. Not to mention the fact that you've got the FCC pressuring every network and in the head of every producer, every host. We just saw Brendan Carr testify. He got grilled pretty good, I think, by congressman who had a shot at him. Then the other night, he was out to dinner, apparently, with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, maybe last night, I think it was. And the reason why this matters and the reason why his testimony matters is because, as you know better than anybody, the FCC is supposed to be independent. It said it on their website until Congressman questioned Brendan Carr. Then apparently they changed it. There are, 5 members of the FCC board that are supposed to be independent, although they're Republican and Democrat. How important is the FCC's independence in the past, and how consequential is the fact that it's run by this loyalist sycophant who is clearly works for Trump no matter what?
Oh, yeah. Brendan Carr has been obnoxious on the FCC for years now. Now that he's in charge, it's all the way. And it's not just the big guys. He went after KCBS in San Francisco and put a chill on them for what they used to have me on, and I could say controversial things, and I don't think I'll be on there anymore. The FCC matters more than it should, Pete, because I've long lamented the fact that the First Amendment has a slice in it for broadcast. And this didn't have to be at all. When broadcast came, and I've been doing this research lately, when broadcast came along, there was a school of thought that said that some portion of broadcast should remain controlled by amateurs, like bloggers, because those are the enthusiasts who were making radio work. The people who invented the technologies behind radio didn't understand what they had with broadcast at all. They thought it was going to help telephones and ship to shore to warships. The government intervened. The government insisted on the creation of RCA it was a military industrial complex, creating that company to bring together all the patents behind broadcast. And the FCC was needed at first just to allocate spectrum, because spectrum is a scarcity, and they had to figure that out. But as it went along, as ever happens with a new medium, there's a moral panic around it. Oh my God, it's going to corrupt women and children and society, and it's going to do horrible things. We must control this. And as we all know, the argument was made that, well, because this is home invasive and because it is a public owned good, the ether, as they called it at the time, then it needs to be regulated. And that was an open door, an excuse to cut apart the First Amendment and not give the same rights that newspapers and magazines and books have to broadcast outlets, radio and TV. So to my mind, that never should have been there. But once it was there, it shows exactly the problem of government interference in speech, full stop. Doesn't matter what medium the speech is. That's where the opening is, and they're going for it.
They sure are. All right, I got to ask you about the latest on the Epstein files release. First of all, how it's been handled since the other day when the deadline was reached by the DOJ. Up until today, it would seem that more is coming out every day or every other day or so, which it seems terrible idea politically for the Trump administration that the DOJ is leaking these things out. But of course, this morning, what came out, and when we see this letter allegedly written by Jeffrey Epstein to Larry Nassar about Donald Trump.
A horrible human being to a horrible human being.
The worst that we know of, child rapist, raped girls, writes a letter to the second worst, Larry Nassar, about, I don't know, maybe the first, who knows if he's the first or the third worst, Donald Trump. What do you make of the story? Also said he was going to, check out before, which insinuated he knew he was going to take his own life. I don't know if this is true. It almost seems like too perfect. It almost seems like scripted. People were saying, a lot of people I trust were saying that they think that the FBI made up text messages from Charlie Kirk's shooter to his trans boy. I didn't believe that. And I don't believe that there's a conspiracy behind this. But it's hard sometimes to see things that I just can't believe Jeffrey Epstein wrote a letter to Larry Nassar implicating Donald Trump. It's a crazy thing. How do we know if that's true?
Well, we know for certain that people are going to doubt it if it speaks ill of Donald Trump. And if you haven't seen the letter yet, folks, it's him saying that our president also shares our love of young nubile girls. While a young beauty walked by, he loved to grab snatch wherever we ended up, snatching grub in the mess hall of the system. He was an idiot, too. He's just plain an idiot, offensive and idiotic. And so now we're going to see the Trump defenders, of course, say, oh, no, this was made up by somebody bad. It was sent just before he died. In terms of him taking the short route home, I could interpret that two ways, that he was going to kill himself or that he thought he was going to get a pardon from Trump at some point because he held stuff on him. So who knows where that letter stands. We also have the fact, the other thing that came out today was a lot more flights than were necessarily known that Trump took, some with young people on the Epstein jet. And you're right to question the sense of how they've put this stuff out there. Because they're, rather than just dumping it whole and flooding people and presuming it's all going to get out there at some point, it's being dragged out of them like the entrails out of a pig. And I don't know where that's going to end up because we don't know what's left. Also, the fact that they blacked out an entire transcript. All they were supposed to black out was certain names. That's it. Now, I'm not sure about this, Pete. Maybe you know the law better than I do in this case. I think the law required them to give everything unredacted to Congress as well, so that Congress can see what was redacted.
Anything that didn't compromise the victims, I think.
But even then, I think it was supposed to go to Congress with even that, so that Congress could judge the redactions. I could be wrong about that. If anybody in the chat knows, let me know. But are we going to know what that 120-page or whatever the number was redaction of a grand jury document was? What so frightens them in that? It's worse than this. We know that. That's why they redacted it.
Exactly. What's worse than that letter from Jeffrey Epstein to Larry Nassar? Probably a whole bunch of things. They could just say that that's fake. Somebody in the chat said, well, we know it's real because it went through court. If it was a lie, they could be prosecuted. It's court documents. I don't think court documents necessarily confirm their authenticity. No. It's a document that you could find that wouldn't necessarily confirm its authenticity out there. And also, Jeffrey Epstein could be making that up as well. Who knows? I don't, he wasn't exactly.
They're both, he's dead, and we can't cross-examine him now.
The other most important thing that we're reminded of today and every day, and I interviewed Julie Stone of the Miami Herald back in 2018. When people say that Democrats and progressives didn't care about this until Trump was implicated, I refer you back to hundreds of us who were covering Julie's reporting back in 2018, clamoring to get an opportunity to talk to her, including Rachel Maddow, I remember. And so, we're reminded today that the most important question about Epstein's prosecution, question that Julie K. Stone asked in her reporting, tried hard to find, is who let him off the hook?
Yep.
Who in the Justice Department, Alex Acosta, who knew? Who let him off the hook for committing those crimes against women? That is something that's in the Epstein files. That is something that can be known. And that is something the American public should know. And there should be accountability for it, right?
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious what you think about where this lands with the far right extremists. With the fight going on at Turning Point, with the Heritage Foundation, with all that, how much do you think the current state of the Epstein files is going to play into that? I'm not one of these. So many of my listeners and friends and people I talk to are super cynical, saying that nothing matters. There won't be any consequences for it. I don't agree with that at all, because I live in a different world where gradations matter. And I think that when you are someone who has a propensity to believe in conspiracy theories, which I've been covering for years, those theories and those people, it means you have a propensity to believe conspiracy theories. This one is tailor-made. You could not write it any better. You could not create a cover-up that would be believable any better. So I think that those people, whether or not they're going to turn away from Trump, they definitely have a lot of questions. And I do think, and there's reporting from inside the administration, that they're worried that they've lost the, quote, podcast bros, from Alex Jones to Tim Dillon to Andrew Schultz to Sean Murphy to Joe Rogan. Those guys all have millions of people, hundreds of millions of people that listen to them. And none of those men, even though they're not good, want to be on the side of protecting Donald Trump and his implication in the Epstein files. And if they are principled at all, consistently, that they care about child trafficking and so on, then they're going to care about this because it's a good story for them. And I think everybody's going to throw this motherfucker under the bus. I think everybody's thrown him under the bus. I think his name is going to be taken off everything that's been on, because his name, Trump, is going to go down with Nassar and Epstein. And I think that it matters a lot, whether or not there are legal consequences, whether or not Donald Trump passes away smiling in his sleep or in prison. I don't think that matters. I do think what matters is that the fever breaks. And to some extent, I think that his implication with Jeffrey Epstein, I think it matters a lot. What do you think? I don't know. I mean, how many times did we hear the call that this is going to do in Trump? Grabbing women by was going to do him in. If he used the N-word, it was going to do him in. And we know he did, and we don't have the tape. And he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. Short of a smoking dick in the Epstein files with Donald Trump's name on it. And I'm not sure we're going to find that. I'm not sure we're going to find evidence of him exploiting an underage girl. So let's just say we don't. But his association is clear. Any other politician, they're trying to smear Bill Clinton, but we all say, yeah, we don't care. Bill Clinton's out of office. The Democrats just don't care. And Bill Clinton's saying, release it all. Release everything with my name on it.
Right.
Stop piddling out pictures of me in the hot tub, which was pretty disgusting in its own way. But anyway, I don't know, Pete. I don't know. I just can't. My spidey sense of national outrage is my antennae are all wobbly.
I still feel like people will do what they are told to do by their favorite commentator, talking head, podcaster, YouTuber. I think they're very influenced by them. They're sheep. They follow. If Joe Rogan decides that someone's bad, they're bad. I think that matters a lot. It was interesting, by the way, Elon Musk also called. Remember when they had the breakup and he said Trump's in the Epstein files? He knows. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people know, and I still think it matters. So, but yeah, obviously a lot of people, including people listening right now, don't necessarily agree. But we'll see. Obviously, I think there's a lot more that we're going to find out, and we can't rest, Jarvis, here at the end of the week Taint Week is upon us, and yet horrific stories keep coming out every day. We cannot look away from our long national drip nightmare.
Yeah.
Finally, New York Times, Washington Post, Morning Joe. You watch all these shows and outlets like a hawk. You have plenty to say about each one. New York Times reporting, you have criticism for the great Peter Baker, who's been covering the White House for years for the Times.
Yeah, and I don't mean to pick on him necessarily, but he is the most prominent, and they make a big splash out of his analyses. So a few weeks ago, he had, after Trump was making no sense, he said, well, he might as well be an alcoholic because he sounds like he's drunk all the time. The proper story then would have been, what is the state of his dementia? What is the state of his of his mental competence? And then this week, they played it again, a big story about he's taking the imperial presidency to new levels. Damn it, it's not an imperial presidency. I say it again and again and again on this show, but this is an example of why I get so frustrated with the Times. This is an opportunity to explore authoritarianism, a dictatorship, fascism. That's where we are, but they refuse. They constantly refuse to go to that line, which means, as I always say, that they rob themselves and their audience of the opportunity for explanation and exploration of that, of understanding where we are under this regime, under the reign of Trump. And so to call it imperial is the cop-out of cop-outs. And he's not doing his job, and the Times is not doing its job in this. So I just got frustrated as hell, and he's the easiest one to pick on in a way because he makes these grand pronouncements as if he's seen something that none of us can see because Trump has all his gold gewgaws, and he has his, he's naming everything. We can all see that, Peter. But if you're really going to talk as a journalist and really talk about what that means, go into the history books, compare it to the lessons of the past, reveal this for what it is so that we can deal with it as a country. And the problem is as ever, whether it's the pages of the New York Times or whether it's the streets of America, there's not enough alarm. There's not enough shock. There's not enough anger. And so the Times is failing us.
Somebody wrote in the chat, Trump derangement syndrome is real. TDS is real. So I don't know who's watching today, but I just want to take this opportunity to say anybody who says that to somebody else, anybody, every time I hear it all the time as a podcaster, as someone who, a public person commenting on Facebook pages and so on, my local Facebook page, Trump derangement syndrome should be defined or redefined to those of you who use it as someone who's so obsessed with Donald Trump that they cannot see what he has done. That's the derangement. Your derangement is that you will follow him or anybody without any scruples, without any filter, without any principle. No matter what he does, you will allow for it. That you, sir, ma'am, are deranged. Those of us who react negatively to all of these things who he does, we are, quote, normal. We have conscience. We have principles. We have moral clarity, which is why we're aghast at that. We're not deranged. We're perfectly fine and normal. You're the ones who are brainwashed and deranged. That's the end of my TED Talk for that. But that's the easiest way to explain it to you people. And it's sad. It's really sad.
And who's the deranged of the deranged? Trump.
Yep. He's the worst
Constant
person.
Evidence that he's completely off the edge.
Yep.
Jamel Bouie is the great grand exception to everything in the New York Times. I depend upon him immensely. And he had a wonderful column, brilliant column, pointing out that Trump's not in charge. Right? This is my word, not his. There's a junta. Huh. There's Stephen Miller. There's Mr. Project 2025. There's all the other various people who are running the country. And Trump is doing whatever crazy crap he does, and they tolerate it and they let it go. But he's in charge of nothing except doing stupid shit like putting his name over Kennedy's.
What do you think of that?
Oh, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. But
who does that? Honestly, has there been anybody outside of like some tin pot dictator in like Tajikistan in this day and age, much less in the past, who put their name on everything? Like Saddam Hussein had statues built of himself and put pictures of him and stuff. So I guess some of these, sick Arab leaders and so on, I can think of off the top of my head, and some of these others, but like, who does that? Like, I guess sometimes a billionaire gives money to a hospital and they create a children's ward or something with their name. I know that in Golisano in Syracuse, where I'm from, did that. Or somebody did that for him. I don't know. The Koch brothers put their names on things and stuff, but it's so unbecoming and gross. When I see someone put their name on something, I always find that I don't even like a family crest myself, but
my family is hillbillies, so we don't have one. Ours,
you don't? It's just
a barrel of whiskey, right?
Oh, no more whiskey in America.
Moonshine.
Jim Beam just closed down a distillery in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah. Well, this is what, as I keep on trying to get this line to take off and it won't take off, right? You remember the line, the Carville line, it's the economy, stupid. And I want to turn it around and now say it's stupid's economy. And so Jim Beam was shutting down is because of the tariffs, because Canada stopped buying bourbon.
Yeah.
That's where it is. You're welcome, Tennessee. It's all because of your man Trump, all because you elected him. There are cases where I think somebody's name on something can lend, I don't want to say credence.
Yeah, if it's a civil rights hero and they've been dead for a long time or something. But when you say put your own name, put my name on a thing.
Well, it's one matter. So having raised money for universities, it's a device to raise a lot of money. It's a naming right. And that's how buildings get built. And that's how we get a lot of money in universities. So, I'll be okay with that. The thing about Trump is he's putting on his name on things he has nothing to do with.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing to do with, right? Except ruining the Kennedy Center completely. The Kennedy Center should just shut down for the next 3 years and do nothing until then. And I also wonder, others should have been smart enough to use this, right? He just decided that wind farms are all gone because it's a security thing. The smart energy company would have said, this is the Donald Trump wind farm. And he would have loved it. Put his name in gold out in the oceans. Everybody comes in. It's the new Statue of Liberty. See Donald's name. Yeah. Then we'd have wind power. I want to name some of my town here. This is something, you're more involved in your town. I think you could do this. Your town has a dump, I'll bet, right?
Has a dump?
Yeah. Yes. We need to rename these things the Trump dumps.
Right. That's good. I like it.
Let's rename them. Yeah.
All of them, or something. What's worse than a dump? Anything else? I wouldn't
sewage treatment plant.
Yeah, but that's a good thing for public service to have.
Is, yeah,
I guess they all are, but in the end, yeah. Oh, I love how many weird MAGA people are watching today. I don't know what happened. It must be you sharing this somewhere, but there's all these great. I dare any of these people to show up as more than an anonymous.
Are we simp boys? Is that us?
I'm a simp boy for sure. I'm a beta cuck. The greatest beta cuck
skit, says somebody. Oh, okay.
Trump is the beta.
Actually, you should hear Pete when he does real comedy. This is morning instead.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. So anyway, Washington Post. Do you want to say anything about them? I think
they're just pathetic and sad and dead. That's pretty much it. Yeah. They're not a factor anymore. There's no saving them. It's gone. That's the problem. Again, I go back to CNN, right? Washington Post is gone. The New York Times is still the New York bloody Times and it still has good reporting, but it's failing us in democracy. Our newspaper chains are owned by hedge funds. Magazines are dead. So there's nothing left of mainstream, so-called mainstream, which really should be, say, white media. And you know what? In the long, long run, that's going to be a good thing because others will replace it. But in the short run, it's going to be chaos.
Also, just wanted to ask you your thoughts on the fracture of MAGA. We saw this Turning Point USA gathering last weekend, all with the fireworks and everything.
I wanted to ask you that. What do you think is happening there? What do you think the end result of that is?
I think that they're having their hoods off moment, and I think that they're unified against people of color and gay people overwhelmingly. But unless those people or individuals are MAGA themselves
and Jews, let's say.
Well, no,
the right tries to act like they're all anti-Semitism, but the anti-Semitism is coming out.
Well, I was saving that people of color and the LGBT community, especially that T, they really hate them. But the anti-Semitism is real overt, and specifically, it would seem that it's now Mark Levin, who's Jewish, but has always kind of hid it until every once in a while he'll mention it. And he tries to stand up for, obviously, he's a huge supporter of Israel. And Ben, what's his name?
Age, man. You're the younger guy. You can remember.
The Daily Wire.
Shapiro.
Thank you. The Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin are Jewish conservatives. And that's, about it. There are a couple of others, but it's the fracture between like those two and the rest of them. Tucker Carlson being Nick Fuentes leading it all, doesn't care about anybody or anything, doesn't care about being deplatformed, seemingly doesn't care about making money or even necessarily being popular, just cares about his horrible views, gets him out there, and he has destroyed, it would seem. Is it the Heritage Foundation? Yeah.
Yes. Not that they were exactly a beacon of
no, of course they were
morality in the past. They were
terrible extremist organization.
It's too much even for them.
Yeah.
It's all race. Everything about this nation comes back to race.
Always.
The Civil War did not end. The bigotry against anyone who's not white in this country is out there. You have the vice president and possible future president of the country, J.D. Vance, standing up there and defending white people. You have Elon Musk with his apartheid showing, saying that for Wikipedia to not understand white pride is not fair because black people can have their pride. Why can't we? And it's all about race.
Indeed it is. And that is the end of the interview because for some reason it got corrupted the last, I think it was just 2 minutes left. If you want to watch it, it should be available, the rest of it, on YouTube and Substack, where it lives. But that is it. That's all I've got for you. Thanks so much for listening today. I think I should be back tomorrow on Christmas Day with a conversation with Bill Boyle. I'm going to get that all fixed up and ready for you right now and posted for you. Probably, maybe I'll just post that today. Either way, thanks for listening today, you bumblebees listening all the way to the end, spoiling me rotten. I hope you appreciated today's show. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Thank you so much for your support, for being you, and for being here. And I hope you have a good Christmas, if that's something you're doing. And if not, I hope you're okay. And that's it. John Carroll taking us out, as he does every day. And I will talk to you tomorrow.
Your fence, even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense, and you stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. Alright, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.